It started in the 1800s, and it was just a one-sheet piece of paper, and it would come out anytime something big happened in town, and then they would have people distribute it. And then eventually it became the Greenville Daily News, and then the Daily News.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is brought to you by WGLM 106.3 FM, Be More Media, West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, and DW Video. Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we are going to look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Discover Montcalm podcast. I got a couple guests here today, and we're kind of bending the rule just a little bit, but Julie Stafford here grew up in Montcalm County. Her husband, Tom, did not, but yet we're going to go through all of that here in a minute. Discover Montcalm, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as going to discovermontcalmpodcast.com and grab the RSS feed, put it in your favorite app for following podcast, and keep up to date. We're coming up on episode 100. Wow, it's been a wild trip. So, but Julie and Tom, welcome. Thank you for taking the long drive from Morley down to here. But I'd like to go back into history a little bit. I know that you grew up in the Greenville area. Mm-hmm. Tom, you grew up in Morley area. It's funny how Paz, I know his parents, I knew his grandparents because of my grandparents and my parents. So it's like, whoa, this is, that 6 degrees of separation got really, really small a few minutes ago. So Julie, did you grow up, you grew up in Greenville.
I did. Yep.
Born in Greenville?
I was actually born in Alma. My dad had the Gratiot County Herald at the time, and we moved back to, I don't exactly remember what year, but long enough that all my memories are from Greenville.
Okay. So you grew up in Greenville. You graduated from Greenville in the 80s sometime. Talk about that. What was Greenville like back in probably the 70s, 80s when you remember?
I feel like I had a great childhood. Back then kids played outside, and it was the kind of thing where in the summertime you went outside in the morning and you maybe came home for lunch, but your parents said you have to come home for dinner.
Once the street lights.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I grew up in the big metropolis of Morley, so the street lights were our cue. We had to be home when the street lights came on.
I remember one of our friends had the mom had a dinner bell. They lived on the golf course, and when you heard the dinner bell, it was time for everybody to skedaddle home. Yeah.
So when you graduated, what was your plan at that point? What was your direction, your job, career focus? Where was Julie wanting to go at that time?
Anywhere but Greenville. I really wanted to do something outside of Michigan. I kind of had the desire to travel a little bit and just separate. So I actually went to the University of Colorado and did 2 years there, and I thought I wanted to be a registered dietitian, kinesiology, double major, but it turns out I couldn't do the science.
Oh, okay.
So I sort of went a little wayward for a bit, moved home, and went to Grand Rapids Community College, worked at the Amway, lived in Grand Rapids for a year, and then started working for my dad at the Daily News. And I covered the fair. I got, I got to write a lot of good feature stories, and that's when he said to me, you're a pretty good writer. Have you ever thought about going into journalism?
So he wasn't pushing you.
No,
He wasn't pushing you, but he said, hey, I see a talent.
right.
One thing that I'd like to do, and for those that have been around Montcalm County for any time, know of the Daily News. And what year, it was your great,
No, it was my grandpa.
it was your grandpa.
Yep.
Can you give us a little backstory on the Daily News? When did it start? When did you guys get involved? When did you take over, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay. I would give talks when I was at the paper, so I had to do a little bit of the history. And it started in the 1800s, and it was just a one-sheet piece of paper, and it would come out anytime something big happened in town, and then they would have people distribute it. And then it kind of grew from that to a little bit more regular. I think it started as the Independent was the name of it, and then it became the Greenville Independent through a series of owners. I think maybe there were 5 or 6 owners. And then eventually it became the Greenville Daily News, and then the Daily News, as we started to cover more than just Greenville. My grandpa was the managing editor at the Detroit Free Press, and that was back in the day when you could just wander around and buy a newspaper. So they stumbled across Greenville, and he moved my grandma and my dad to Greenville and took over at the newspaper. And so
what year was that your grandpa took?
that was in 1951, and then he started to grow it. He had an entrepreneurial spirit, and he was a little bit ahead of his time. He was the first to have a certain type of printing press, because they did a lot of commercial printing too, and they would have people come from all over the world to see this paper. It was the first one east of the Mississippi. And then my dad got into the business when the rule was you had to work someplace else for so many years, so he and my mom...
That's not a bad thing.
No.
It
That's
isn't.
not
You
a
learn
bad thing.
how somebody else does the business. So they spent a little bit of time in Oregon and then moved back and worked at the Gratiot County Herald in Ithaca. And then when my grandpa got sick, my dad, that was probably the late 60s, early 70s, my mom and dad moved back to Greenville. We lived on Satterley Road. And then my dad took over and was just as entrepreneurial as my grandpa. And
Apple didn't fall far.
didn't fall far from the tree. They actually spun off did so much printing for other clients that they spun it off and became Printco.
Right.
And then
I remember when that happened.
Yep. And then built a big building out in the industrial park, and then that sold, and they were just in the downtown office with the presses, and then that again became so busy that they spun it off, and the print plant moved out onto Fairplains, where the old Clarion building was.
So, wow. At what time in this whole process, once your dad was there, who preceded him, and how long after that before you took over the reins, so to speak, at the paper?
My oldest brother, Rob, worked with my dad after he worked somewhere else for 5 years.
Yep.
And then he came back and worked with my dad and worked in all the different segments of the business. And they worked side by side for many years until my dad passed away. And then my brother ran both the paper and the commercial printing side of things. And in 2011, I had some life changes. I was living out in Boulder, Colorado, and we started talking about how I could play a role. I'd graduated from journalism school and worked at the newspaper in Boulder for a few years. And in 2012, my 3 kids and I moved back to Greenville, and I became the publisher of the newspaper. And then after a period of time, we became co-owners of both the commercial printing and the newspaper.
Quite a history.
Quite a history.
Currently, we're in 2024 right now. Who now owns the paper? Who's the manager?
In 2019, my brother was looking to retire, and so we actually went out and found another Michigan-based newspaper commercial printing group called View Newspaper Group. And Michigan Web is their commercial printers.
Okay.
Printing arm of the View Newspaper Group. So they purchased the paper in May or June, early June of 2019, and I worked with that organization in Greenville until last May, the 2023.
Okay.
And then I retired.
And then you retired.
Then
you
I did.
Just kind of washed your hands of that, and now you're getting your hands dirty in another way. But we're gonna go over that in just a minute. Tom, we've been going through a lot of history here, and at that time, you grew up in the Morley area. Still there.
Still there.
Still there.
Well, I moved away for a while, but now I'm back, and I grew up. I'm a Mohawk, and after I graduated from high school, I went to Ferris. And then after I got out of Ferris, I got in the banking industry, which I've been in for 34 years now. And I landed back on the farm that I grew up on, built a new house there, and now I'm still banking, which I'm the market president for Horizon Bank out of Big Rapids.
Okay.
And then me and Julie met and got our entrepreneurial spirits together, and here we are today.
We would like to thank our sponsor, M1063, WGLM, FM, your locally owned and operated radio station, playing the widest variety of music to keep you moving with local news, sports, and weather. Visit m1063.com. Be More Media helps businesses be seen, be heard, and be more profitable. Be More Media helps small businesses get seen on Google and found through digital marketing and print marketing strategies. Visit them at bemoremedia.com.
And today, you're doing what? I mean, I can tell by your shirt, but you went from newspaper banking, but you're still banking. Yeah. But now you got your fingers in another venture. Tell us about that.
We're growing lavender. We have a lavender farm on Tom's farm in Morley, and actually lavender and Christmas trees. So Tom can talk about the Christmas tree part of it. He's been planting those for years. That part of it won't be open to the public just yet, but we're opening actually this weekend for the first time to the public. So this will be the first time they can come to our farm.
Okay, so because this is going to air after that, you normally open what time of year?
This is the first year we've done it. So this is our third year growing.
Okay.
So we just don't know what we don't know, and we will open hopefully from here forward when the lavender blooms, and that depends on the weather and what kind of year we've had, that sort of thing.
A lavender plant takes time to mature. That's why we couldn't open right away. I mean, when we plant them, they're just plugs, just little baby plants.
Right.
And then after the first year, they're this size, and the second year they're a little bit bigger. Well, now we have plants that are 3 years old that are, bushel basket size, and that's where we can get the volume now to open to the public because the plants are matured. And we're still planting. We just put in 400 new baby plants, so it's evolving process.
And I'm going to show how I just learned this prior to rolling tape. Or tape. I go back a few years, don't I? Yeah. Okay, roll that beautiful bean footage. We're ready to go. But a lot of times when you talk about farms, you talk about acreage. But in the lavender business, it's not how many acres you have, it's what?
Number of plants.
It's a number of plants. So
yeah.
when you're in that lavender network talking to other people, it's like, oh, I have 1,000 plants, or I have 500, instead of 40 acres, 80 acres, 300 acres, that type of thing.
Right. A large lavender farm would be in the thousands of plants, probably more than 10,000, and that's a lot of work because it's all hand. I mean, you grab and cut, and the bigger farms that are growing lavender, it's more probably oil-based because they do have machines that would come and cut it, and then the stalk and the flower part, that's where they get the oil out of, and that has to be distilled. So that's where you would get into a real commercial oil-oriented farm. But you have to have a lot of plants to do that, and we've just decided that that's just right now that's a lot of work. So
how many plants do you have?
We have about 1,000.
You have about 1,000.
Yep.
So you went from the high-paced world of newspaper, where everything is a deadline, everything's going. Banking, still kind of the same thing. It's not a there's a little pressure there. Is this kind of your zen, kind of your happy place?
You know, that's kind of something I think my kids would say I have a little hippie in me, but I've just always wanted to find ways to help people live their passion and just find peace. So to me, I do not have a green thumb. All of my kids have a green thumb. So the fact that I can grow lavender is kind of funny. But
it must be a pretty resilient plant.
it does. It doesn't.
I'm sorry.
Nope. It needs sandy soil, no water, and full sun. So we've got all of those things. But to me, we've decided we don't want to be a commercial big operation that has a lot going on. We are Peaceful Valley Farms. We want to be a place where people can come and look through my little farm store, the things that I have, maybe get a glass of lavender lemonade and sit and listen to the birds and just find a little bit of zen.
Okay, you had the Christmas tree farm, so you've got the acreage. I'm a fly on the wall. Where did the idea of lavender come in?
Well, Julie said to me, hey, lavender's kind of a up-and-coming thing, and I'm like, well, I don't know much about lavender. I was born and raised
Isn't
on
that a color?
Yeah.
It's purple, right? And that's all that I knew. So before we planted any, we got in the car and we drove and took a 3 or 4 day vacation, went to Wisconsin, and there's a pretty cool one over there in Baraboo, and then there's a really big one on Washington Island in Lake Michigan on the Wisconsin side.
Okay.
They have 30,000 plants. It's really...
That's a business.
That's a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to take the car ferry out to the island, and when we got out there to the actual lavender farm, we had to wait in line to get in the building. And I'm like, okay, so we had to take a car ferry, we have to wait in line, it's on an island, and I'm like, okay, there's something about this lavender that might be worth looking into. So,
Well, you're a financial guy.
yeah.
You got to make sure that if we're going to do it, that there's a business plan and that there's a way. Now, you've got the big corporate side. 30,000 plants. I think that's you're at 1,000. You're probably going to grow. You've got a store on site. What are you doing? I mean, is it someplace people can just kind of come out? Do you have chairs around? And
We have a few chairs now. I mean, I have my vision of having lots of picnic tables, and we got married in our barn last August, and then right after the wedding, Tom started and he put up a wall and created this little store space. But my vision right now, we'll just see this year kind of what goes. I would love to have a slushy machine and have people be able to come out and have a lavender wine or lemonade slushy and sit and have some lavender cookies and just, bring their kids out. We also are doing some senior pictures this year, so we've worked with some photographers to schedule times for that because it's really pretty.
yeah.
So we're just kind of looking at what it will involve, and we'll see where we go from there.
So what is the growing season? I mean, like I know that, you plant corn, you want it knee-high by the 4th and all that kind of stuff. What is the growing season for lavender?
Well, the plants we put them in May, but the blooming season for a matured plant, our plants right now today are, it depends on the variety, but we have a variety that's bright purple, and Julie's already started to cut some of that. It's all about the buds and the flowers, and it's all at a right time. But to answer your question, it's June and July. That's when it buds, and that's when you have to cut it when it's budding for the fragrance to be at the peak. So it's a 2-3 month deal at the most for the lavender, and then that's why we're going to do the Christmas trees too. So my farm where we live, I've been planting Christmas trees for just wildlife.
Right.
And that turned in, they're big now, and I've had them in 7-8 years, and they look like we cut one down every year for our Christmas tree. And I'm like, well, maybe I can market this at the same time. And we're not going to have a Christmas tree farm where it's just rows and rows of trees. I've planted plots of trees, which sounds kind of crazy, but there's 200-300 here, there's 200-300 there, and we have big space with lots of acres. So we're going to give rides with wagons once these trees that we're planting now get
Sure.
big enough.
Make it a family event.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. It's going to be
Choose and cut.
Yeah, we want like this might be crazy, but a Disney World experience for a Christmas tree where it's a family thing,
Right.
in the wagon,
The fire, hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate.
all of that. Yep.
You know,
Yep.
And in the summertime, lemonade and
Lavender, yep.
ice cream and
Yep.
whatever else might happen.
That's right.
West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions is your local source for managed IT, websites design and hosting, digital marketing, and more. Check them out at WMTDS.com. Check out Busy Bees Embroidery and Vinyl Signs, your one-stop shop for your embroidery and screen printing needs. Located south of Stanton, go to CVSDBusyBees.com.
You're listening to Discover Montcalm podcast, and we kind of took a little turn because Julie and Tom, they're up in Mecosta County, but when you think about it, we don't have walls around our counties. And even though the Discover Montcalm podcast focuses on Montcalm, Julie, with her tie to Montcalm, and in a way that, kind of a lot of people, if they didn't know you, they knew that you were from the paper. But it's something that, you still have ties
I do.
in Greenville.
Yep.
And your mom's there, your daughter's there, and it's only a hop, skip, and a jump.
Right.
I mean, it's not far at all. In your mind, why should someone discover? Let's talk about Montcalm County. Why should someone discover Montcalm County?
There's just a feel about Montcalm County. Having grown up there, I lived in Colorado for 26 years. People always look at me like, you moved from Boulder, Colorado back to Greenville. What were you thinking? But the people, first of all, I would say the people. The people are interested, they're friendly, they'll go out of their way for you. It's just a very hometown feel. But there's actually a lot to do in our area too, with the trails and the lakes and kayaking and biking, and it's a great place to raise a family. My kids kind of felt a little bit like they were in a fishbowl. We lived on a street where everybody knew each other in Colorado, but then we moved to Greenville, and the first time we walked around Baldwin Lake, people were coming out saying, "Hi, Julie and
Yeah.
Grace and Alec and Emma," and they were just like, "What is happening?"
Yeah.
But people care here, and they take care of each other. So I just think there's quite a bit to do if you start looking for it, and just the people.
West Michigan has so much to offer.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. The Big Rapids area, the Greenville area, your Rockfords, and then you get Carson City and go over on the east side. There's a lot of day trips, and I take that with what you're doing at the farm is you're kind of looking at that day trip. You know, a place where people can come and just relax.
That's right.
You know, sitting here in 2024, if you could put on your thinking cap for a moment, vision, what would you like to see over the next 3 to 5 years
For our farm,
for your farm?
I would just like to have the reputation of people to return every year, to have it be something so special, so unique, that they want to bring family who come into town. I have this great place to go. You have to come in June or
We're gonna go spend
July.
a day. Yeah.
We're going to go spend a day, and
It's like Anderson and Girls.
That's
You know,
right.
It's those types of places that maybe you don't want to visit them every single day,
right.
but you do want to have that special occasion. So that's, and I would kind of guess that would be your vision from the start, but I needed to ask the question.
Yeah, we're kind of out in I say we're out in the middle of nowhere, but we're definitely worth the trip. I mean, the FedEx guy pulled in the other day and he said, I was driving down the road thinking I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I drove down the driveway and this is beautiful.
Right.
You know, this is so peaceful. And I said, oh my gosh, that's, amazing. That's what we are. We're Peaceful Valley Farms.
And for those of you that are watching it on YouTube, you're going to see Peaceful Valley Farms with an S. We'll have a link to their Facebook page, and a way that you can contact them. Because you are seasonal, you offer tours. What are you doing?
Right now, we're inviting people to the farm on the weekends, and through the month of July, they'll be able to. Some weeks, I'm asking people to follow our social media, just because I don't really know when things are going to peak. I don't know how it's going to shake down. I don't have control over Mother Nature. So, but I have put on hours for each weekend, so people can follow there, and we're just asking people to come and check us out.
Right.
Cut some of your own lavender, look at the shop. We have a lot of great gifts, a lot of things that you might use for yourself. And then just come back again in November when we have our little Christmas thing going on. And
check out the page. You're going to let
check
people
out the
know
page, yep.
What's going on. They can cut their own. They can have some hot chocolate, a ride.
Yep.
Kind of a...
Get a tree, get a wreath, get some gifts. Yep.
And check out all the lavender products that you're going
That's
to
right.
have offered. I'm glad that you took the time to make the trip from Morley to Howard City. I know the traffic out there might have been a little bit much, even passing a couple Amish on the way probably. But is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to leave the audience with before we close this?
I just think in today's world, people they're working so hard, and it's, even coming from the newspaper world into retirement for this lavender, it takes effort to try not to be so busy. So Tom works all day, and then he comes home and he's doing 1,000 things around the farm. He can build anything, but it's where we get our peace, it's just being in the moment. So I really feel like people need to find ways to just be in the moment, and we would offer something like that, just to take a deep breath and decompress a little bit. We need more ways to do that.
We do have a unique spot where when you come there, you don't see any neighbors, you don't hear hustle and bustle, and as Julie said, she says we're in the middle of nowhere, but it is quiet and peaceful, and what you hear the most are the birds.
Right.
And it's relaxing. Like she says, I come home and do a lot of work on the farm. I was raised a farm kid, so it's in my blood, and it's how I relax by staying busy doing a million things. But it has really turned out really, really good. As a farmer, I would say the lavender crop really looks good. So it's been a fun thing, and it's been good. It's really starting to come around.
Sometimes we look at each other and we're kind of amazed that what we had in our heads is happening. It looks like what we had in our head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't control the news,
That's right.
but you can control your farm.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and that's great. One last thing before we head off. Lavender, it's good for a lot of different things. What are some of the things, the advantages of lavender, whether it's an oil or as a food or a drink? You know.
Lavender is the 2024 culinary or herb trend of the year. So you can use it in all kinds of foods. People are kind of surprised to learn that, but you have to be careful with it. It can get a little bit too strong. You have to watch your varieties. Not all lavender is edible. We have a variety called Hidcote. It's a little bit more mellow. It's great for margaritas, lemonade. I bake with it. It's good in marinades.
Margarita.
Yeah, I have vinegar. I have scone mixes. But other than that, it's also, if you're not sensitive to smells, you know, it can help relax you. I make heat therapy pillows. It's good for just lots of times it takes people back to their childhood.
Yeah.
It can help. Yet there's lotions and salves that help with bug bites and burns. So, you know, and it's beautiful to look at.
Peaceful Valley Farms with an S. Check them out on social media. Julie and Tom will have the hours posted, so that, and then as it grows, I'm sure the hours will open up. But it's a place that you can go and just kick back and relax. Check it out. It's not too far of a drive from any place in Montcalm County. You know, come in and check it out. Tom and Julie, thank you so much for taking the time. You can follow us on discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Check out all our episodes, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Check everything out. Remember to share it. And if you've got an idea for a podcast and you from Montcalm County or you've got a tie here, let me know. 231-250-9624. My name's Dwayne. I'm the host and producer. Julie and Tom, thanks again for stopping by. Remember to buy and shop locally.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is produced by content creator Dwayne Weed, celebrating 40 years at DW Video and Multimedia LLC at dwvideo.com or call 231-250-9624. Connect and follow the Discover Montcalm podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Check out all our episodes at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. We look forward to featuring your business, community, nonprofit, events, and more. Contact Dwayne at 231-250-9624, 231-250-9624. Thank you for tuning in and following the Discover Montcalm podcast.